Thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of Authors to Know and Their Books to Read. I'm your host, Martinique Brown. I'm so excited that you have decided to tune into the show today. I'm really excited about our author that's going to be here on the show. His name is Latane Brackett III, and he's going to actually be talking to us about his book called Can I Just Tell the Truth? We just need some truth out here in the world. We don't need no fluff. We need the truth. Now, if this is your first time ever tuning into the show, thank you so much for watching the show and tuning in. What we need you to do right now is go ahead and share this video so that more people will know about Latane as well as his book and as well as the show. Latane, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you, Martinique. I'm glad to be here.
Great. So can you just tell the viewers just a little bit more about yourself as well as how long you've been a published author?
I'll start with how long I've been writing. I've been writing published since March of 2017. I am a native of Norfolk, Virginia, but I've been living in Texas for about 24 years. I'm a father of 3 grown children, and but all 3 I'm very proud of. I have 2 grandsons, Isaiah and Carter. My wife, Tracy, is an educator, and I'm very proud of her. And we've been together a long time. Yeah. And we're coming up on another anniversary in December. So.
Oh, that's excellent. That's excellent. So now, can you just walk us through your book?
The book is filled with original leadership quotes. So every quote in there is a quote that I personally have come up with and put in the book. And it's really designed, it's not a read through, it's a think through. Okay, you can't open this book. It's somewhat like the Bible. That if you open it up and try to read all the way through it, right, it's kind of, you're going to get confused. But this book here really it tackles different leadership topics, and the intent of it is for you to take that, read a couple lines of it, and then have a dialogue with somebody. For parents, this is great for having a dialogue with your children about leadership, because I think that is, as we see now, right, that there's definitely a leadership gap globally. And the way we fix that is at home. And we fix that with a book like this that enables you to have dialogue with your family, your friends, your coworkers, and just sit around and talk about, what is leadership and where are you on that continuum with regard to how you're leading.
So now I know that you were saying it's broken off into sections. Does that mean that it's kind of topical? Is that how it is?
It's not. It's intentionally not topical. It is because this is a think through, and you don't go around thinking the same thing all day. So the book is written that I have the topics intermingled, because again, the intent is not to just read straight through it. It's to sit down and say you're at your book club and you read a couple lines and then you toss it around and talk about it. Because I think that leadership is a subject that we have not talked about enough. But we're talking about it now, right? Because we have a lack of it. And because of that, we have a lot of issues in this country. So the intent of this book, again, is so that you can get a topic or you can go to the middle of the book. You can start at the beginning. It doesn't matter where you start. There's good stuff all the way through.
But I guess my question is, how is it broken down? Is it, what a leader is, and then it goes to the next section of, what a leader isn't? Like, how is it sectioned? Okay.
To be clear, it's not designed that way. It's designed as a collection of quotes, original quotes. And then after each section, you may have like 3 quotes. And then I have it's a journal. So I asked the question, what is my truth, right? So this is what I said my truth is, but what is your truth with regard to what you saw here as you have that dialogue? And then the second question I asked is, what's going to be my shift? Okay, so am I going to make any changes based on what I read, what I dialogued about, or am I just going to keep going? Maybe your answer is I'm not going to do anything. But it's designed to make you think. So again, it's not a novel that you can read through and Johnny did so and so. It's not that kind of a book. It's really is a collection of original thoughts, and then you think and you sit down and you think about it, and then you write down what you think about it, or you discuss it with somebody else, and then you can go on to the next topic. But the entire book all the way through is designed that way.
So now, how would individuals sitting down and discussing the quotes, how would it force them to become a leader?
Well, you can't force anybody to become a leader. Let me start with that. But I think that if you're interested in being a leader or being a better leader, it definitely gives you some food for thought. Let me just give you an example. One of the quotes says that you can't make a good name for yourself by calling other people out of theirs. Then it says, building your reputation is a lifelong process. Don't condemn its construction during the groundbreaking. And so, again, it's something to think about in terms of how you build your reputation. It's a lifelong process, but you can do one thing and ruin your whole reputation.
Right.
And so, again, the other part of that, too, is speaking to, if you want a good name, you don't get that by going around calling everybody else out of their name. And so you have dialogue around that. And then you can talk about some instances that you have had in your life where either you were on the receiving end of that, or maybe you didn't do it the right way. And then as a result of that dialogue, start thinking about some alternative ways to address the individuals that you come in contact with.
Okay, I understand now. So now, do you have any questions in the book that will help to initiate like these questions or discussion amongst individuals?
No, I don't have specific questions where I'm saying, because I'm not trying to drive the discussion. I want it to be organic. Okay. So I didn't specifically say, and maybe that's something I can do in a workbook later, is go back and say, okay, and try to lead some people down a particular path. And quite frankly, when I've done training, corporate training, I have tailored something specific for those groups, using the book as the basis, but then putting a specific program around whatever the need was at that particular corporation or company that I was in at the time. But for the book itself, I really wanted it to be organic. That was my intent. I wanted it to be something that you can sit down with a child or a teenager or even someone in college or a colleague at work, and just take a little bite, because a lot of times maybe you say, well, I can't sit down a long time. Well, this don't take a long time. You just take and read 2 sentences, talk about it, and then get some dialogue out of it. Because really, it's not really about, the book is just fodder, right? It's just to start the fire. And then I want you to continue it on.
Okay. And why did you decide to write it as a book of quotes as opposed to, just our typical like go-to book in what leadership skills look like?
Well, first thing I'll say is that we have a lot of books that kind of tell you what it looks like, but we still don't see it. So I didn't want to follow that mode. What I wanted to do is to give you the breadth of quotes. I mean, I probably, even outside of the book, I probably have about, I don't know, somewhere about 2,000 to 3,000 quotes, leadership quotes on social media. And they're going to hit you differently. There may be something that you see in the book that doesn't fit you, right? But there's something that I have written that will hit you and fit you. And I'm hoping that you'll take that, and that'll be a spark for you to make a dramatic change in how you interact with people. Because again, this starts at a base level, starts in the home, starts in the schools, it starts at, on college campuses, and then in the office place. One of the things that I did in this book, and the reason why I wrote so much around leadership and these quotes, is really to combat bullying. Because I think what has happened in this country is that we have too many people who are bullies on the playground who are now in high positions still bullying people.
Yeah. And I think that just for the term of bullying, we always associate it with kids. So I'm really glad that you just mentioned that these kids that were bullies, they grew up and they're in they're in these possibly these higher positions, and they still take on that mentality of bullying individuals. So do you feel like your book is a book that helps an individual to stand up for themselves?
I think it'll help you stand up for yourself. And I think more than that, it will help you to stand up for others. I think because much of the bullying exists is because of the other people who don't say anything about it, who allow it to happen. And that's the unfortunate piece, because, you can't give a bully any room. No matter where you isolate a bully to, they'll start, picking on the people who are in the corner with them. So you can't move a bully around. You really have to deal with that. And because we haven't done that, we now have people in very high positions who are bullying people. I'm sure that people who are listening right now that have some bullies at work. that did some things that were totally out of line, against the company policy, code of ethics, and everything. And then, but even the HR people wouldn't do anything about it. Why? Because they were afraid of the bully.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's very interesting that you know, that's one of your goals behind individuals that read the book, you know, because I think that a lot of hesitation comes from standing up to a bully, especially when they're in a higher position, or the consequences that you will face, you know, as that individual. You know, you might take on that characteristic as somebody that always complains about something, or, you know, maybe even your co-workers may be hesitant about doing things around you because of maybe that stigma that you now have associated with you when you do stand up, you know, to a person. What would you say to somebody that has a lot of hesitation about standing up to that bully that's in their workplace?
Well, first thing I would say is you talked about the stigma, and the question is, how did you get that stigma? And sometimes you got that stigma. I put it on you because I didn't want to deal with the bully. So I'm going to say something's wrong with you because I'm not afraid of you. I'm afraid of the other person. But I think what I've had to do in my own life, I mean, quite honestly, I had a manager one time, very high level manager. I was high level myself. And he told me one day, he says that I'm going to make your life a living HELL, right?
Uh-huh.
In my face. You know, he and I by ourselves, right? That's what he told me. And I was at a place in my life where I could tell him, and I told him, I said, well, no, you will not. Because as far as I'm concerned, you can go ahead and let me go back home to my house, and you can hire somebody else because you've made it abundantly clear by all of your actions that you don't want me on your team. And I'm okay with that. And I resigned and left and did something else. Because to me, it wasn't worth being mistreated.
Yeah.
Just so I could have a high title and be in, and I wasn't going to put myself through all that stress. So I would tell a person, one, if you have a mentor, go to your mentor. If you have a sponsor, go to your sponsor, whether they be at that job or somebody at your church, in your community, a family member, whomever, that you can get some backing and kind of say, this is what's going on. How can I best handle myself so that you don't end up doing something that makes you look bad? Because a lot of times what happens is you let this build up and boil up and eventually it boils over. Right. Yeah. And now the discussion is about Martinique is a problem because she, flew off the handle at somebody who's been picking with her, by the way, for 3 years, who we have not addressed. But at that moment, they want to address you. So you want to keep yourself in a place where people can't point the finger that something that you're doing. And I would also say document it. Make sure you document the behavior. Be very specific. You don't have to share with anybody right away, but keep a journal and document what happened on what day and who said what, when, and where. Mm-hmm. And so that when you do need to go to HR or to if it's the EEOC or whoever you need to go to, that you have some documentation. You can say, this is what has occurred.
That's good.
And then they can kind of get the understanding that if they don't take action as they should, then you have the ability now to say, hey, I went to talk to so-and-so, they didn't do anything, and here's what I showed them, as opposed to you don't have any data.
That's good. Okay, that's good. So thank you for answering that. We do have Renita Langston, author D.L. Winters, and Joe Portal tuning in. Thank you guys for your questions and comments. Make sure you all go ahead and share this video now. If you're just now tuning in, you're watching Authors to Know and Their Books to Read. I have author Latane E. Brackett III here on the show, and he's talking to us about Can I Just Tell the Truth? So, Latane, we have a question on the floor. This is coming from Renita. Will this book work in the education field, preferably administrators?
Absolutely. It will work. In fact, it from the classroom up, because really there needs to be a dialogue around leadership. Because let me just kill a myth. Okay, just because you're in a high level does not mean you are a leader. Okay. Let's just be honest about it. Sometimes people got in these positions and they're not exhibiting any leadership skills whatsoever. Quite frankly, sometimes you've gotten a position because you were a very good individual contributor and they didn't have anybody else and you had an opportunity to go in the role, which is great for you. And I'm not knocking that person. But what I'm saying is what happens many times is they never get any training on how to lead because that's a different skill set. And so you're asking somebody to lead without giving them the tools to be successful. So absolutely, Renita's my sister-in-law, by the way. And you can use this at the administrative level with teachers, with the parents, and certainly with the students, and not just at the school, but at home. Let's start this in the house, and then bring this to school and continue it, so that you're not trying to, as a school teacher. My wife's an educator as well, so I know full well that many times, you're dealing with diamonds in the rough. And I just think that if we do more at home, that they don't have to be quite as rough when they get there.
That's good. So our next question on the floor is coming from author D.L. Winters. He's asked a question: is it an opportunity to dig deeper into ourselves to find answers to your quotes?
Absolutely. I mean, that's the intent. The intent is, this is my truth. This is what I had to say about it. But don't take it, in fact, on the back of the book, I tell you to challenge what I said. Okay, challenge it. Let's have a dialogue. Come, let's reason together. The intent is to really the peel the onion and keep peeling it until it hurts, right? And because that's the point where you're gonna make some discoveries about yourself that, maybe some things you don't like. Maybe you have some blind spots that you're not aware of. And by taking the time to go through these questions and ask them, and then you gotta, and that's why I said use it at home too, right? Because I can go to work and maybe I can answer the question, come up with an elegant answer, and everybody goes for it. But at home, where I'm dad and not VP, or I'm mom and not the principal, your kids are looking at you and they see you in a different light, and they're going to be more honest with you in terms of, well, mom, I don't know if you do it quite like that, because you remember that time that this happened. That's not how you handled that situation.
Yeah.
And so, and I think that's the kind of discovery we need to have that's going to enable us to use what's in this book to get better in terms of how we not only treat the folks at home, but the folks at school, at the grocery store, at church, and everywhere else.
Yeah, it's good. So now, Joe Porto, he has just a compliment for you. He says, I work with Latane in the business world. Listen to him. He knows what he's talking about. Smart guy. And he also posed a question. So his question to you is, how do you change to use these skills to change organizational culture?
I think that's a great question, Joe, and I'm glad you joined. Joe's been one of my mentors for quite a while. I would say that the first thing you have to do is change yourself. Too often we want to change the world, but we still want to be raggedy, if I can use that term. You have to, one of the quotes I came up with just today was that you need to, to stand up, stand out, and to be upstanding. And that means that you need to stand up against injustice, okay? You need to stand out and not just be running with the crowd, because a lot of people just run with the crowd, don't even know why they're there, because a lot of people ran that way, they ran with them. But the other piece of it is be upstanding. And what that speaks to is your integrity. And it speaks to how you are on the way to the protest and how you are on the way back home from the protest. So that, you're upstanding, that you have the integrity to build trust with others and to lead teams. Because the bottom line of it is if I'm at home and I'm disagreeable with my wife or my children, and I'm just a tyrant at home, but then I want to go to work and all of a sudden I'm something different. One, I'm living a lie, and two, that's not going to translate well.
Yeah,
that's not going to translate well, because I'm double-minded in how I conduct myself.
That's so true. And one of the things that I was thinking about was preachers in particular. Now I'm a Christian, so I don't want people to think that I'm saying this in a harmful way. But so many times we'll hear about preachers sometimes that portray this persona, at the church, but then when they get home, it's a different story. And it's so sad to me how what they're preaching in the pulpit, and then you hear about them like beating their spouse or something like that, and I'm just like, that is such a contradiction of what you're telling like thousands of people, to act. And so I just feel like there's so much truth to what you're saying in, the people that know you the best, they're really going to be able to tell you or share with others how you truly are outside of the public eye.
And one thing I'll say, Martinique, is I've said this before, is that I really believe that before you can take any kind of public office, whether it be or even the office of service at a church, your family should have to give a testimonial about you. Not you get up and speak well eloquently and show your resume. But if your family had to speak, maybe some people would even go up there because they'd be afraid what the family might say. But one of my quotes, earlier quotes was, it says, let me be a pillar in my own house. Because we talk about being a pillar of the community, right? Be well thought of by others. But are you a pillar in your own house? Are you the person that people can count on in your house? Okay. And so to me, that speaks to, again, back to integrity in terms of how you conduct yourself and carry yourself and having the kind of values that will extend out from home. Because at the end of the day, if you think about society, the basic building block of society are our individual homes, our individual families. It starts from there. And many times we try to do it the other way. We try to start from big government and go down to the family, but you got to start at the bottom. That's really the grassroots.
But let me ask you something. If we're talking about individuals being realistic in how they truly are, who do you turn to get that hard truth about who you truly are?
Well, I have a quote that speaks to that too. And it talks about that, if you surround yourself with yes men and yes women, people who agree with you no matter what you do, you're with the wrong crowd. And I think another way I frame it is that if you're always the smartest person in the room, you're either in the wrong room or you're in the right room with the wrong people. And you got to get people who love you enough and think enough of you to correct you, okay, to give you the guidance, to give you the tip and to pull your coattail and say, listen, you know what, Latane, I don't think I would have done it like that. And do one more thing for you and say, here's a better approach. And so now, not only did you tell me I didn't do it right, but you also showed me how I could do it right. And so I think that we got to have people that we can trust and stop having folks that just ride along. And maybe it's because, they don't want to miss what you provide. Maybe you're the person who buys the drinks, or you buy the lunch, or you provide the shopping trips and all that kind of stuff. So they don't want to lose that. So they won't be honest with you. But it is critically important that if you want to get better, again, it starts with if you want to get better.
That's good.
Because if you don't want to get better, none of this will work for you.
Right.
But if you're trying to improve while you're trying to lose weight and, like me, I got this bald spot in the back. I'm trying to get more hair back in there. But that doesn't make any difference if I get more hair or lose weight or get muscled up if my inside is rotten. Right. And this book is really about how do you fix the inside.
That's good. And I think one of the a good characteristic to have is to continue to be around those people, because who are really just trying to put you down and just keep you at the bottom, as opposed to those people that love you and really just trying to make you better as well. So we do have Ariel Wells who's tuning into the show, and as well as Permilla Mackey Foster Turner. She says, hello, my brother. But Ariel asked the question, how do you lead from a place of humility and compassion? That's a good question, Ariel. Girl, you need to be up here with me.
Miss Wells and I worked together at Tennessee State University, and I can say that she has a heart of compassion. How do you lead? I think that's the only way you can lead is from a place of humility. If you lead by your title, I had a gentleman that worked for me years ago, and I won't say his name, but he was a maintenance manager, and he would have his meeting, and I would go in there, and I was a technical manager at the time, and I would go in the meeting, and as soon as I would leave, he'd come tell me, he says, as soon as you left out of the room, all the mechanics, they went off and disrespected me, and I told them I'm the maintenance manager, and I told him, I said, Dan, everyone here knows you're the maintenance manager, apparently, except you. Okay, so what I'm saying is, if you're leading by your title or you're leading by intimidation, one of my quotes speaks to the fact that you cannot intimidate people into enough that they'll inspire you, that you inspire them. In other words, you either inspire a person or you intimidate a person. You cannot do both at the same time. So you really have to come from a place that people talk about servant leadership, but really it's about coming from a place that, listen, you know what? Regardless if I'm the top person, the VP, and somebody else works on the line, we are co-workers, right? Mm-hmm. And I would go to dinner sometime and I would see somebody that worked in my organization, and I would walk over to the table and I would introduce myself. as their coworker, and then I would let their family know how a valuable person they were to the organization. Yeah. Now, what would it look like for me to go over? Oh yeah, I'm VP so and so, and this little person here works for me, and yeah, they're on the line. I only halfway see them. You know, that's not humility, and that's not how you build relationship and build value in people, and get people to be not only being create an environment that's inclusive, but be in an environment where people get engaged. That's the issue. We have people that are on board, but they're not engaged. So when the fire breaks out, they just look at it. Mm-hmm. They're not engaged. It's not their stuff. You have never made them feel like it was their stuff. But then when a crisis comes, we expect them to jump in as though, you know, we've been treating them right all along.
Right.
They're glad the place burning down.
Right. They're going to get that unemployment.
Exactly.
But Ariel, you really brought up a good point. So Latane, how do you keep the characteristics of humility and compassion and still keep that sense of authority over the people that you lead?
People know what your authority level is, right? They know the hierarchy better than you do. Okay, I think so. To me, it's really about connecting with people on a personal level. Okay. And caring about them as a person. Okay, knowing their name. Knowing about their children, you know, to the extent that they want to share it, not going around prying, but to the extent they want to share that with you, and knowing a person enough that when they walk past you and they're upset, that you can tell something is wrong. You may not know what's wrong, but you can go and say, "Hey, Miss Wells, you don't seem the same today. Are you all right?" And if she's willing to open up to you, sit down and really genuinely listen to what she is saying and not be dismissive of it. And if you can help. Okay. And maybe sometimes that help may be just a spoken word. It may be letting them know about some resources that are available to them, like EAP through the job. Or sometimes it may, quite frankly, it may be that it's, you know what, this is one of those ones that I'm going to have to reach in my pocket and make a difference. Mm-hmm. Rather than go home and pray about it, I can go in my pocket and make a difference right now if it's something that I can do. Yeah. But I think that's how you do it. You have to be genuine. You have to be real. You have to connect with people in a real way, and people know frauds. They know that if you don't really care. I mean, you can't go and try to fake this. You have to really genuinely be this all the time. And I always tell people to be consistent, whether you're at the grocery store, whether you're at home, or if I see you, at a park or whatever, I'm still going to speak. I'm still going to engage you the same way, and not all of a sudden, because I'm not in that arena, treat you differently.
But that's what I'm saying. So do you? What it sounds like you're saying is that genuine compassion towards somebody and building that rapport and those relationships with individual brings respect from that individual that you lead. Is that how you feel?
It not only brings a level of respect, but it stems from you giving respect. Okay. So it's not even so much about you getting respect. It's about you giving respect. Mm-hmm. Because that's the basis of the relationship. When I would take over, say, a new role, one of the first things I would ask my team is, how can I support you? What do I need to do? As opposed to coming in day one talking about, y'all, listen, we're not performing well. And most times people say, you not performing well. But I would own it and say, we're not performing well. I need to know what is it that you need to meet so we can be successful, as opposed to immediately asking what they need, because I don't even know what their issues are. So let's open up the floor and say, I'm the one with the power or the authority, as you say, to kind of remove some of their obstacles. So let me first ask, what are the things that are keeping you from being successful? And then once they enumerate that, let's help get those moved out of the way. Because what we do when that happens is we have a contract between us that says, if I can help you to remove these obstacles out of your way, then you can deliver the performance. Mm-hmm. Because and it doesn't necessarily mean that I always remove it. Some of it is me showing you how to remove it so that you can do it for yourself.
That's good. And one of the things that I think about all the time is somebody said, the way that you become your best is helping somebody else become their best. And that has just always stuck with me, because it is about that, serving that individual to help bring them up to become their best. I do want to give a shout out to Myra Poole. She said, exactly, you earn the respect genuinely through your actions. Great discussion. Myra, make sure you go ahead and share this video now. So Latane, I know that you actually mentioned in your book summary that it is intentionally provocative. What would cause readers to feel that way, you think?
Because you have to examine yourself. This is not one of those books that you're going to feel good about everything that you read. I mean, because it's going to make you look at yourself in terms of how you're engaging people, starting from the family, and then all your other relationships that you have. And you got to look at yourself. And if you're going to use the book to get better, you're going to have to be willing, again, like I said, to peel the onion until it hurts. Okay, yeah. Because none of us, including myself, are doing it all right. Okay, yeah. Just because I wrote the book don't mean I do all this right. And so, because and quite frankly, sometimes when it pops back up on Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever, and I see it, I'm like, because I needed that in that moment, right? Mm-hmm. And so that gives me a moment of reflection in terms of maybe something that I'm dealing with in my life that now I can go back and take that morsel and chew on it. Right? I got to chew on my own words. Yeah. And think, and I did that just today. Something came up. I showed my wife, and we talked about it because we get up every morning and we go walk 14,000 steps. And while we're walking, we can talk a lot, And so if we're not singing, we're talking. So, but I think it gives you an opportunity to look at yourself and get better, because this is not about making somebody else better. This is about making you better, and by doing so, you have better relationships with that individual. Because if it's just about, I don't have any problems, let me go hand this to my husband, let me go hand this to my spouse, my brother, my team, my coworker. Now, if you're gonna go buy two and y'all gonna sit down together, that's helpful. Otherwise, the other person's just gonna be offended and not do anything with it. But I think any manager who's looking, or leader who's looking to develop their team or get some dialogue in their team, certainly about difficult topics, this is the way to start doing that, where you start having those difficult discussions and then have people to get comfortable with the idea of sharing, here's what my thoughts are, and here's where I'm coming from. But at the same time, recognizing that there's no one who's all the way right? Yeah. So this is about how do we move to center, not how I move you to where I am, but how do we all move closer to center.
So now I know that your book is about leadership. Do you think that your book is helpful to someone who doesn't consider themselves as a leader or have a leadership role?
Absolutely. I think, first of all, let me just dispel. I've managed large teams from first I had some teams with only a couple of people up to, having organizations where I had over 1,000+ people that worked in my organization. And what I can tell you is that some of the best leaders were the informal leaders, the people who didn't have the title, but the people who had earned the respect, as we talked about earlier. And so, and a lot of times, and when you try to have a change plan, you need that person who is respected by the team, and they may be at a entry level, right? They may be at the frontline level, but that is the person that everybody else will listen to. So you got to get that person on board first, and then you can be successful in moving folks forward. With regard to individuals who think that they're not leaders, I would say that we are all leaders in some way, because somebody is looking at you. Yeah. Somebody is following you, right? Following your lead in what you're doing. You may not be formally a leader. You may not even know that they're following you, but somebody's looking at what you're doing every single day, and they make a decision. I mean, you look at two kids, right? Neither one of them is a leader, right? By definition, but one will start doing what the other one is doing, and we continue to do that as adults. We watch people, we start trying to emulate their style, whether it be an athlete, whether it be an educator, a performer. You get somebody to sing a song. Whitney Houston is a great example of this. You not only want to sing the song that Whitney sang, you want to sing it like she did, right? So which says that you're emulating her style, and we emulate other people's style. This will allow you to, one, correct your style, right? So that when somebody's emulating what you're doing, they'll be doing some of the right things. But also at the same time, it'll enable you to kind of see what it is that I'm doing that's having a negative impact on other people, that's causing them to behave the way that they are.
So now I know that especially like author D.L. Winters asked the question, will it help you to address and answer some of those difficult questions? Do you ever answer the quotes so people can have an understanding of how you feel specifically about those quotes you've written? Are there any platforms And not talking about the podcast that you have, but like, how could somebody know how you felt specifically about a quote?
Well, as of yet, no, I have not. I've not done a lot of answering the quotes, other than for people. Sometimes what happens is somebody will catch me on social media and they will send me a direct message. And everybody who's ever sent me a direct message, I've responded. And honestly, I don't get many, but I'm surprised where I get them from. Sometimes I get them as far as, Senegal or Australia, and sometimes it's somebody who I would have thought that couldn't care less about what I had to say. And part of it is them sharing that, hey, how it's been impactful to them, and then asking me, well, specific questions around it. And then I will take the time, and I've done that on many occasions, and dig into it deeper in terms of this is what I mean by this. But again, this is just what I mean. You still got to search it for yourself in terms of how does this fit you.
Mm-hmm. So now, I did list in the description box, you all, Latane actually has a podcast called Can I Tell You the Truth? So, Latane, what can listeners expect to hear when they listen to your podcast?
Well, first of all, it's a brand new podcast right now. I only have one episode. I just started it.
Congratulations on that. At least you
thank you on starting, because I think that's a big key too, is that we need to start stuff, right? Because we got all these ideas and we never get started with. And in fact, I was sharing with somebody today. I said, we need to start thinking like Apple and folks like that. And they said, what do you mean? I said, they'll sell you the next level, let's say the X12 iPhone, and charge you the highest price, be very proud to charge you $1,000 something, and know it's full of bugs, right? And we buy it, and then they'll send you a download to fix some of the stuff that's wrong with it. But when we do things, we tend to think we have to have it all right before we can present it. But I would say is go ahead and put something out there. Somebody's going to be critical of it regardless of how well you write it anyway. Sometimes people get mad, which is like, why are they mad with me? I'm trying to encourage people. Why would you be mad with me? But that's what they are in the place they're in. So to me, I think that it's important that, I take the time to develop what I'm trying to say and put it out there. And so far it's worked well for me. It comes, and I only write when things come to me. I don't just try to force fit anything. I only write what comes to me, and then I'll write it down and I'll wordsmith it and so forth. And sometimes it may only be 2 sentences, but trust me, it may have taken me 4 hours to come up with those 2 sentences.
But so I know that you had the one episode right now, but what can listeners expect to hear when they do tune into your podcast?
What they'll hear is, one, they're going to hear something that's going to be heartfelt, it's going to be truthful. In fact, the one episode that I have up now is about restoring critical relationships. And that's in relation to a critical relationship that I have, one with my youngest son, where we had a break in our relationship and how it got restored. Now, what you won't hear is me acting like I know everything and saying that, okay, if you do step 1, 2, and 3, it's going to work, because one size does not fit all. But I will talk to you about, why it's important to make the change. And what you're going to benefit out of the change. And for example, in that particular episode, I talk about the fact that you will never regret restoring a critical relationship. You absolutely will not. It may be tough, it may be difficult, but if it's a critical relationship, meaning one that's very important to you in your life, then restoring it, whatever it takes to do it, you're going to be very happy that you did. And as I am with my son, quite honestly, and that was a 2-year period of time that we were not meshing. And I lost something in that process. And I talk about that in there in terms of how I thought I was still 100%. And only after the relationship was mended did I realize that I had been walking around limping and dragging one leg. And in that moment, when we came back together, then, it was this magical moment where I felt all my strength come back. I think the way I phrased it was it was as though I was Superman and I had been walking around with kryptonite in my pocket. And in the moment my son and I embraced, it was like it fell out of my pocket on the floor, and all my strength came back, and my height came back, and my stature came back. And he told me the same thing. He said, Dad, now that I have you back in my life, I can do anything. And I think that other people have similar experiences. So those are the kind of things you can expect out of my podcast. Again, it's not trying to answer everybody's questions, because I don't have all those answers. What I can tell you about is what my experiences have been, what some of my lessons learned are, and be honest enough and bare enough to put it out there so that if it can help you, then so be it. That's what I want to happen. I want you to not have to go through some of the experiences that I may have had because I made some wrong decisions or some wrong turns.
Well, I think that that's very noble of you to be transparent like that, because sometimes when we do hear about individuals, accolades or their positions and things like that, we do think that they have it all together, and we really don't get to hear about how they are continuing to become the person that they strive to be. So kudos for you for sharing that, about you and your son's relationship. Um, so Ariel asked a question, what are the steps to restoring critical relationships? Good question, Ariel.
Well, again, as I said, I don't have all the answers, but I'll tell you what I think it is. The first thing is you have to come to a place where you're willing to restore the relationship. And I'm not talking about them, I'm talking about you. Okay, because sometimes because we don't feel like we've done anything wrong, and maybe you really didn't do anything wrong. But what I found in my relationship with my son, that didn't matter. Okay, that doesn't matter. If you really want the relationship to get better, you have to be willing to step to center and not say, well, when they decide they want to talk with me, I'll be standing over here. Well, you may be standing there for a long time. One thing my son said was that after we had restored our relationship, he was at some training. And he said that, they asked what was the most important thing that he had done. And he stood up and he said that restoring his relationship with me was one of the most important things he'd ever done in his life. And it was interesting because before he said that, there were other people talking about, well, how much money they had made, different accomplishments they had, places they traveled and so forth. But after that, it totally shifted. And people started talking about, I wish I could mend the relationship with my parent or with my sibling. And then some of them said that further that the person had died already, or the person has, has gotten to the place where they don't even know who you are, right? Because now they have some kind of deficiency in their mind where they're ill, and so they don't even know who you are. So even if you would say I'm sorry, tomorrow they forget that and don't even know who you are. So I think the first step is, again, that you have to be willing to change, and you have to be willing to step to the center. And it may mean you need to go all the way to where they are. The other piece of it is that you have to have a forgiving heart, and first forgive yourself, and then forgive them. And then I think you have to be willing to move forward. All right. You can't keep dwelling on what happened. If you say that y'all have mended the fence, then mend the fence and go on. Don't stand by the fence looking at where it's patched up. Go to another space. And I think that's the other piece too, is recognizing that it's an organic process, and it's not necessarily going to be an overnight process. With my son and I, it was miraculous how it all took place, but at the same time, it still was a healing process in terms of us drawing closer again, right? And building that relationship. In my case, I literally went to where he was and got on an airplane and went out there and spent we went way up into the Rocky Mountains, and we went all over the place. And some places I was scared, to be honest, because he was driving and we were going around some of those hairpin curves. And I was like, man, get me from up here.
Yeah. But I mean, and I think that that's great that you and your son restored your relationship. But what does that practically look like? Was it just a matter of, okay, I'm gonna call my son and I hope he answers the phone? Like, what did that look like?
Well, I'll tell you, in my case, I had called my son several times and he would not answer the phone, okay. and it was to the point that even like for example, if his birthday and I called and left a text message, he might even have changed his phone number because he didn't want to talk to me, right? Okay. So totally shut me out from that regard. And again, I'm not saying that as something bad, it's just what happened. Okay. And so I had to then, stand with open arms and be ready. And what happened was I got the text and the call from him. And
okay, so just out the blue. Okay. Yes. So after all of this pursuing, right, then when he was ready, then that's when he finally messaged you back. And I think that that's so good that you said that you have to wait there with open arms, because like you said, this is a two-person relationship. So that individual may not even be ready to accept your apology or, mend the relationship or whatever. But like you said, you have to be open and ready when they are ready. So he sent this message out the blue, and then what?
Okay, sent a message out of the blue. I answered the phone. He said, "Dad, I need you in my life." And I said, "I need you in my life as well." And I know I bust out crying. I don't know what he did.
Oh, okay.
And so it wasn't a tug of war. That's what I'm saying. It wasn't. Uh, my heart was at a point that I wanted my son back, right?
Yeah.
And I miss my son because my son is very much a part of who I am. Anybody know me know that, how I am about all of my children, and certainly my youngest son. And so it was very hurtful to me that not to have the kind of relationship that we had had. And again, it wasn't something that he had cursed me out or I cursed him out, but we fell apart, right?
Got you.
And sometimes that happens in life where you're out trying to provide a living for your family and stuff, and you lose sight of what's most important. But for us, it was really that he reached out. I was willing to extend my hand further than he had stuck his out. It wasn't like I sat back. Oh, so now you want to talk, but I didn't do that. I was very, very glad and grateful. In fact, I told my wife after this happened and we had restored the relationship. I told my wife, she thought I was crazy in what I said. I said, if I die right now, it's okay, because now I'm whole again.
Yeah.
Now I wasn't planning on dying. I wasn't going to help facilitate the process.
Yeah.
But my point is that was such a big part of who I am that was gone. That when I got it back, in that moment I was complete, and I was happy. And I never wanted to have a relationship with my children, any of my children, where we were not connecting and talking. I wanted to make sure that I am providing some coaching, some development, some words of wisdom, which is another reason why I put these words in this book, because after I'm gone, they can read it. My two grandsons, Isaiah and Carter, they're 3 and 4. They'll be able to read it. What did Papa think? And give them some guidance in terms of how they might carry themselves and avoid some pitfalls that maybe I made in my life by gleaming something. Because when my dad passed, he died at 58. I was 36. I got a cassette tape of him singing. That's all I have of my dad. Now, don't get me wrong. I have all the relationship and the thoughts and all those kind of things, and I cherish that. But I don't have anything tangible. And so to me, this was something that I thought about in terms of, if for no other reason, if I never sold a book, at least I can put something in these books that my two grandsons can take and benefit from. And everybody else who wants to benefit from it can get something out of it as well.
So now, let me ask you this. There are so many books out there about leadership and just building your character and things like that, and how to become your best. Why should somebody add your book to their library?
Well, again, what I can tell you is these are all original quotes. One, you won't find these things in another book, because I didn't just pull that out of theirs. This is something that came from my heart in terms of, things that I've thought about over the years in being a leader in my home, being a leader in my community, on the job. And more than that, I think that this one is not prescriptive. It's not, hey, you read the book and you do these 7 things or these 7 habits. Well, I'm not knocking the 7 habits. I've read it, I've taken the course, and it's a good course. But for me, I think that what's here is something that everybody can use. And you don't have to use the whole thing. You can use just a little part of it. The other thing is, I think that it's time for people who look like me to play in this space, because most of what you read on leadership is not written by us. We don't write it. We go and we listen to it.
Yeah.
We have some of the same thoughts and practice and so forth. But again, this is something that somebody who looks like me has. I wrote this, and for better or worse, I'll take the hit. If you read it and go through it, and you say it's junk, then it's my junk. But if it's something, if it's a jewel, it's a jewel that I was able to put forward, and if it helps you, then I've done my job. And that's what I'm really after, is really providing another avenue and another tool that you can use, and anybody can use, and certainly you can use with your children. And again, I implore mothers and fathers to take the time to just read a couple of these quotes and sit down and talk to your kids about it. One thing my wife and I used to do when our children were small is we would have daily affirmation. and each of the kids would have to say something good about everybody in the family, and we in turn would do that as well. You will be surprised what your kids know about you, how your kids know how hard you're working, how your kids know what sacrifices you make. And they will tell you, if you ask them and give them a forum to share it, you'll find out they're more mature and know more, and they're more hip to what's going on than you think. Yeah. And this is just another way to do that and get that connectivity.
That's good. That's good. Latane, I thank you so much for being on the show and helping us have a better understanding of why you decided to write your book and what your book truly is about. Can I just tell the truth? Thank you so much for being on the show.
And thank you. I've enjoyed being here.
You are welcome. And I thank you as the viewers just for your great questions and your comments. I wasn't able to get to all of them, but thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Authors to Know and Their Books to Read. Don't forget to continue to share this video so that more people will know about Latane and his book. If you're interested in purchasing Latane's book, make sure you go right there in the description box, right there next to the dollar signs, and that's where you will find that Amazon link. Make sure you also follow Latane on social media so you know when he does book tours, if he's ever in your city, or when he's doing any type of his motivational speaking as well. I hope you guys have a great night, and we will talk to you all later. Bye-bye.